arrays in C. We'll again start with the same funda. We'll first try and understand why does this concept of arrays exist. Then we'll see what are arrays, and then we'll see how do we go about working with arrays. Now we'll be discussing this arrays in two parts. In the first part, we'll just build up to the basic concepts. We'll understand all the basic fundamentals, and then in the second part of this particular chapter, we will be discussing some very important logic, some very important examination questions as well. Right. Also, you need to be really good with arrays, because the better you understand arrays, obviously you'll be able to do a lot of stuff in C programming. See, all the concepts to come after this. This is one-dimensional array, then you have two-dimensional array, then you have strings, then you have structures, then you have something in pointers. Literally everything is dependent on arrays. So you just cannot afford to be weak with arrays. Also, the better you understand arrays, easier it will be for you to understand concepts like vectors and stuff in Java. Easier it will be for you to understand concepts like list and tuple in Python and other technologies, right? Let us try and understand why does this whole concept of an array exist. Now observe this. See, so far what we've been doing in our programming is, if suppose I'm required to work with one value say of the type integer, तो उसको save करने के लिए हम लोग क्या करते थे? हम लोग लिखते थे integer a. Now when I write something like this, this is telling the user, telling the system that I want to work with one value of the type integer, and I want to call it by this name a. तो system क्या करेगा? मेमोरी में जाएगा और मेमोरी में जाके आपके लिए वेरिएबल a बना देगा. Because it is integer, the memory allocated in C language would be 2 bytes. 2 bytes का memory allocated. Now suppose if I wanted to work with say two values, we were creating variables like this, integer a comma b. System क्या करता? मेमोरी में एक वेरिएबल a बनाता, मेमोरी में एक वेरिएबल b बनाता. If you wanted to work with three values, you could have written integer a, b, c. What the system would have done was, वो मेमोरी में जाके a बनाता, b बनाता, c बनाता, and so on. So over here, what we've done so far in our programming is that whatever the value that I'm required to work with or whatever the value that I'm required to save, हर चीज के लिए हम लोग एक अलग वेरिएबल बनाते हैं. We've been creating variables like this, right? तो एक वैल्यू के लिए एक वेरिएबल बनाया, दो वैल्यू के लिए दो वेरिएबल बनाया, तीन वैल्यू के लिए तीन वेरिएबल बनाया. ऐसा हम करते आए. But imagine now I'm talking of say practical program. Suppose the number of values that I'm required to work with is high. Suppose अब ना मेरे को 100 values के ऊपर काम करने का है. See, so far what we did was two values के ऊपर काम करना है तो दो variables बना दिया a and b. So जो दो values है वो लाके variables में रख दिया. This is what we've been doing. But suppose अब मेरे को 100 values के ऊपर काम करने का है. So now the issue is, now the argument is, अरे 100 values जो है उसको मैं save करूं कैसे? क्योंकि 100 values को save करने के लिए I need 100 variables. Now the problem is, how do I create 100 variables? Do you actually expect me to create 100 variables? A, B, C, D, E, F and so on, till say about whatever the 100 names that I can get. One, that is not possible. 100 values के लिए भाई 100 variables बनाओगे किधर से? अच्छा suppose कोई तो एक मंद आ गया अपने को बोलता है कि okay 100 values चाहिए ना, ये लो 100 values के लिए ये मैंने 100 variables बना दिए. Now the issue is, if you've created those 100 variables, how do I remember them? So that is not working for you. So what I understand as of now is that whatever way we've gone about writing our programs, it will work with say less number of values. 2, 4, 5, 6 value hai na, it will work fine. But when you talk of large number of values or when you talk of lot of values, this is not working. This is just not going to work. So what do we do in this scenario? So हम सोचने लगे कि क्या किया जाए. See, understand this. ऐसा नहीं है that my system is not capable of processing say large number of values. But the problem here is, how would my system remember those many values? That is the problem. Now over here, say if you talk of this lecture, now over here, I'm supposed to teach so many of you. See, for me, it doesn't make a difference whether I'm teaching to one person or whether I'm teaching to 100 people. It's the same thing. My work remains the same. I have to teach exactly the same thing. But imagine if somebody tells me कि ये session में से जितने भी से suppose 100 लोग हैं, I have to remember the names of each and every person to be able to teach. Now there's a problem. Problem is not with teaching. Problem is with remembering. How do I remember 100 people? Now that is not going to happen. That is not possible for me. Similarly, my compiler can process one value. My compiler can process two values. My compiler can process 2000 values. Not an issue. But the problem is, how do I remember those values? So over here, what we thought is कि अगर हम कुछ ऐसा कर सके, where the compiler doesn't have to put say too much of an effort to remember anything, then it will be able to process. अगर हम कुछ ऐसा कर सके wherein we could refer to say 100 values. See, if I want to work with 100 values, suppose if I could refer to 100 values with the same name, then अपना problem solve हो जाएगा. Imagine I'm told that you are required to teach 100 people. You don't require to remember all 100 names. You just remember one name and that should be good. Now then it is always possible for me. एक नाम तो मैं याद रख ही सकता हूँ. तो अपने को जरूरत है एक ऐसे टूल की जिसकी मदद से हम लोग बहुत सारी वैल्यूज को, एक जैसी वैल्यूज को एक नाम से रेफर कर सके. एंड दैट इज व्हाट इज एन एरे. एरे क्या है? एरे एक तरीका है जिसकी मदद से हम लोग बहुत सारी एक जैसी वैल्यूज को सेम नाम से रेफर कर सकते हैं. So how do I define an array? An array is a collection of multiple values of the same type which can be referred to by the same name. Right? Okay. Look at this. So हमने कुछ अलग नहीं किया. जैसे आप एक इंटीजर बनाते थे, यही कॉन्सेप्ट को मैंने एक्सटेंड कर दिया. एंड नाउ आई विल क्रिएट एन एरे लाइक दिस. इंटीजर A3. इसका मतलब है आई वांट टू वर्क विद 3 values of the type integer, and I want to call them by the name A. I want to work with 3 values of the type integer and I want to call them by the name A. तो सिस्टम क्या करेगा? सिस्टम मेमोरी में जाके let's continue. Okay. So when I write like this, I'm actually telling the system that I want to work with 3 values of the type integer and I want to call it by the name A. तो system क्या करेगा? मेमोरी में जाके जैसे एक इंटीजर के लिए मेमोरी allocate करता था, it will now allocate memory for 3 integers. For each integer, the memory allocated was 2 bytes. So over here, when I have 3 integers, 2, 2 and 2. So in all, this is 6 bytes ka memory, and this A that you see over here, this A refers to the entire 6 bytes. So this is how we'll create an array. How did we define an array? An array is a collection of multiple values of the same type which can be referred to by the same name. Array एक तरीका है जिसकी मदद से हम लोग बहुत सारी एक जैसी वैल्यूज को एक नाम से रेफर कर सकते हैं. So if I use the name A, just A, it will refer to all the values. But हुआ क्या मालूम है? When we started using this, then we started facing some problem. Now what is the problem that we are facing? या क्या हुआ इसमें? See, we got stuck up when we started using this data. Now suppose if I have an array like this, if I have a variable like this, if I want to store a value, I'll write A is equal to 8. इसका मतलब था I'm telling the system that I want to store this value 8 in the memory referred to by A. तो system क्या करेगा? A refers to this memory, तो इसमें लाके वो value store कर देगा. Issue ही नहीं. Now, I try to do something similar over here. I'll write A is equal to 8. I'm telling the system that I want to store this value 8 in this memory which is referred to by A. Now, when I come to this A, what I find is that this A refers to all these memory locations. So this A over here does not refer to any memory in specific or any memory in particular. तो यहाँ पर तो मेरा सिस्टम अटक गया, मेरा सिस्टम फंस गया कि अरे which memory location are you talking about? See, when we were over here, आपका जो previous जो सादा variable था, when we were over here, A was referring to only one memory location, so there was no problem. But over here, A refers to all these memory locations, so I don't know which memory are you talking about. So something like this, which works with an ordinary variable, it will not work with an array. The reason why it will not work is the name of the array refers to multiple memory locations, multiple values. It does not refer to anything in specific. That is the problem. Now the mistake that I have made over here is, see, it's like an apartment, it's like a building. Now all of us, maybe most of us over here, we stay in some building. See, आप ऐसे समझिए, over here this A, this name of this array A, this A actually refers to the name of the building. Now, if say you talk of your building, आपका जो building का नाम होता है, it refers to the entire building. Suppose that building has say 50 flats, 50 apartments, then that name refers to all 50 apartments, right? Now, if somebody wants to visit me, उसके पास अगर सिर्फ बिल्डिंग का नाम होगा, that person will be able to reach the building. The person will reach, say, at the entrance of my building. लेकिन उसको कैसे समझेगा कि कौन से अपार्टमेंट में जाना है, कौन से बिल्डिंग, कौन से फ्लैट में जाना है? That the person will not be able to figure out. So what we do is, whenever we create a building, for each flat or for each apartment, we assign a unique flat number. Right? So you might have some flat numbers like this, 101, 102, 201, 202, something like that. And if somebody wants to visit my place, they should, one, know the name of the building, and they should also know the apartment number or the flat number. यहाँ पर आप देखिए, ये जो array हमने बनाया है, it is kind of mistake that I've made. What I've done over here is, I have created an array, I've created a building, but without a flat number. That is why my compiler is stuck up. उसको समझ में नहीं आ रहा है कि कौन से वाले memory location में जाना है. इसलिए what the compiler does is, when I create an array, it does not create it like this. What it will do is, it will start, once it creates an array, it will assign numbers to each of these memory locations, starting from this value 0. So these numbers that you see over here, they are what are called as indexes. So this is what is an index. Indexes are an integral part of arrays. Now please remember, when you talk of indexes, see, array में जो कुछ है ये index है. The moment you understand how to manipulate an index, you will be able to do everything. So arrays, this entire concept is about knowing how to manipulate indexes. Now talking of indexes, always remember, whatever the programming language, C, C++, Java, .NET, Python, whatever, the starting index is always 0. Now observe this, in this particular array, I have 3 values, so last index is 2. Had there been, say, 10 values, so last index would be 9. Similarly, if there are n values, the last index would be n minus 1. So always remember, the starting index of an array is always 0 and the last index is always n minus 1, where n is the number of values contained in the array. So always remember that without indexes, your arrays are always going to be incomplete, right? So now, with this little background about why an array, what is an array, we are now all set to start with some programming on arrays. Okay, now let's get started with the programming part. Now the first 3 programs are extremely important for you, because what I plan to do is, I plan to cover all arrays ka concepts in the first 3 programs, और उसके बाद till the end of this session and the end of next session, we will just be implementing a lot of little complex logics in arrays. But basic funda जो है, it is these first 3 programs. ये 3 program आपको बहुत अच्छे से आना जरूरी है. We'll go very slowly today. I don't care in this session if we do just 2 programs or 3 programs, but you need to be very sure with whatever we finish with today. Okay, let's start with the first program. You can just take down the question quickly, 10 seconds. Write a program to read 4 values into an array and display them. Okay, now this first program is going to teach us how to create an array, how to read values into an array, and how to display them. Basically, how to access the data from an array. That is what we are going to learn. Now let's get started over here. Now to start with, what I've done is, the header files are okay. Over here, what I've written is integer A4. Now when I write like this, I'm telling the compiler that I am required to work with 4 values of the type integer and I want to call them by the name A. तो system क्या करेगा? System memory में जाके आपके लिए एक ऐसा array बना देगा where the starting index is 0 and the last index is 3. ये array बन गया. I've used I. आपको समझेगा why am I going to use, where am I going to use this variable I. Okay, let's now proceed. Now suppose I'm required to read 4 values into an array. Now generally speaking, if I'm required to read 1 value, I would have written the code like this. मैं लिखता enter value and then I would have read the value of A like this. But understand, now I'm required to read 4 values. ऐसा मैं लिखूंगा तो ये तो एक ही value read करेगा ना. So what I'm now thinking is, अगर मेरे को 4 values read करना है, तो I will now have to write a loop which will make sure that both these statements repeat 4 times, right? Now array में, whenever I'm working with arrays, obviously I'm going to work with multiple values. So no wonder we'll keep coming across this for statement at all times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take both these statements and I'm going to put both these statements inside a for loop. कैसे आएगा? For I is equal to 1, I less than equal to 4, I plus plus. So I've written this loop which repeats 4 times. Why is this loop repeating 4 times? This loop is repeating 4 times because I need to read 4 values and hence I want these statements to repeat 4 times. इसलिए हमने ऐसे लिख दिया. But also please understand this. When you talk of an array, if suppose this is array A, खाली A लिख के कुछ होने वाला नहीं है. If I want to go to the first memory location, I need A0. If I want to go to the second memory location, I'll need A1. If I want to go to the third memory location, I need A2. So this is obviously always going to be A followed by some index, na? Without this index, I'll never be able to access array ka memory. So now the question is, how do I generate these indexes? ये index generate भी करना पड़ेगा ना? So what I'm now thinking is this variable I that we use in the for loop, see, it can give me numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, right? I'm going to use this variable I as a counter, but at the same time, now that it is giving me, it can give me consecutive numbers, and the indexes that you see over here, they are also consecutive numbers. So I have decided this variable I will have 2 roles for me. What? One, it will act as a counter, ensuring that the statements get repeated the desired number of times. And second, it will also generate indexes for me. So in all our programs involving arrays, variable I is going to do 2 things. What are the 2 things? One, it is going to count the number of values. Sorry, it is going to count the number of times the statements are going to be repeated. It is going to control that in fact. And second is, it is also going to generate indexes for me. Now observe this, keep an eye on how exactly I'm going to make use of this variable I. Please observe this. I'll start here. I is equal to 1, for loop start ho gaya. 1 less than equal to 4 is true. So come down, enter value, ampersand A of I. So I ka value abhi kitna hai? This is 1. So this is effectively ampersand A1 na. So jo bhi pehla value aapne diya wo A1 mein chala gaya. Suppose the first value given is 8. Wo idhar chala gaya. When I go back, then I plus plus becomes 2. 2 less than equal to 4 is true. This is your normal for loop. Then this becomes A of I. So this is effectively A2. So whatever is my next value, wo idhar gaya. Now this is how this loop will keep going on. Not an issue. Chalta rahega. But if you see this memory location at index 0, this memory location has been wasted, na? ये memory location पूरा waste हो गया. Now this is because array के जो index है वो 0 से start होते हैं. Yes, this is true that generally if I want a loop to repeat 4 times, I'll start like this. For I is equal to 1, I less than equal to 4. This is true. But understand now variable I is not only just counting the statements, it is also generating indexes for me na. अब अगर index 0 से चालू होता है, तो my problem here is that this variable I cannot start at 1. This also has to start at 0. See, suppose if I want to repeat 4 times, so I want to count 4 times. So अभी तक हम कैसे count करते थे? I can go 1, 2, 3, 4. बराबर है? But now the same thing can I count it as 0, 1, 2, 3? अरे अगर इधर ये 4 बार repeat हो रहा है, तो इधर भी तो 4 बार repeat होगा ना? Just that instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, I'll now count 0, 1, 2, 3. So what this will do is, this will not only repeat the statement 4 times, but it will also generate the indexes in the desired manner for us. That is why while working with for loop, one change that I'm going to make is I'm not going to start my count at I as equal to 1. मैं कैसे करूंगा? I'll start at 0. समझ में आया? In this loop, why did I change this I from 1 to 0? Also, if you see from less than equal to 4, I've gone to less than 4. You could have written this as less than equal to 3 or less than 4. Less than 4 बोला तो 3 तक जाएगा ना. तो 0, 1, 2, 3. अभी भी आप देखेंगे तो 4 बार ही ये statement repeat हो रहे हैं. ठीक है? Now just observe this. How exactly is this loop going to work? I hope this clears once and for all. Why I'm starting I at 0? Because array के index 0 से आते हैं और I अपने को index देने वाला है, इसलिए मैंने I को 0 से start किया. Now please observe how this loop works. I'll assume that user is giving me 4 values. कैसे? I is equal to 0. 0 less than 4 is true. Come down. Enter value आएगा screen पे. Read the first value at A0. A0 क्या करेगा? ये आपके लिए पहला value read कर लेगा. Then ये loop खत्म हो गया. फिर आप इधर जाओगे. I++ हो जाएगा 1. then I'll say 1 less than 4 is true. Now when I come to this loop, I का value कितना हुआ 1, A1, अगला value index 1 पे गया, 8, 5, these are my assumptions, हाँ. Then you'll go back, I plus 1 से कितना हो गया 2 हो गया, फिर आप इधर आएंगे, this is 2 less than 4 is true, read the next value at A2 में आ गया जो भी next value था. Then go back, I plus is now 3, इधर आइए आप, 3 less than 4 is true, read the next value at A3 में आपका next value गया. Then what I do is I will go, I plus is 4 less than 4 is false, this condition fails, this entire for loop terminates. So this is how I have read the values from an array. Right? 8, 5, 9, 7, these are my assumptions that user has given me these values. That is what we've done so far. Okay? So this is how I'm going to read values from an array. Now similarly, I have to display values from an array. Now again, if I want to display values from an array, I'll have to first visit index 0, then index 1, then index 2, then index 3. वापस से I'll be required to generate indexes. Without indexes, array में कुछ हो ही नहीं सकता है. So I'll write a similar loop. जैसे मैंने रीड करने के लिए लूप लिखा था, देखिए ऐसे मैंने यहाँ पर this at the top of your screen on the right side, I've written a loop for displaying an array. खाली इतना फर्क है कि रीड करते समय जो scanf था उसकी जगह now I'm going to add printf. I'll just suppose मेरे पास ये array है, right? See, this is the array that we had just read, right? Now observe, how do I display this? For I is equal to 0, I less than 4, I 0. 0 less than 4 is true. Come down. Display the value at A0. A0 में क्या value है? This will display 8 on my screen. Then I go back. I plus 0 से कितना हो गया? 1 हो गया. ये इधर आ गया. This is 1. 1 less than 4 is true. Display the value at A1. A1 में क्या value है? 5. That gets displayed on screen. Go back. I plus is 2. इधर आइए. 2 less than 4 is true. Display the value at A2. A2 में क्या value है? 9. Go back. I plus is 3. इधर आएंगे. 3 less than 4 is true. Display the value at A3. A3 में क्या value है? 7. Go back. I plus is 4. 4 less than 4 is false. Condition fails. This loop terminates. My program terminates. This is what is my output. So this is how I can read and display values from an array. I hope this is understood. This is how this program is going to work. Okay, right? We'll quickly write down this program and then we go to the next question. Okay, let's go to the next program. Now please listen to this very carefully. Next 10 minutes also is extremely important for us. So that's the program. Yes. Write a program to find the sum of n integers. So over here, I'm required to read n values and I'm required to calculate the sum of those. Right? 10 seconds, take down the question quickly, and then I'll start with the solution. Okay. Now please understand the basic difference between the previous program and this program. Like what I mentioned at the beginning of this lecture, more than anything, the first 3 programs will give you the concepts. We are done with just the first program. Now the second program. Understand the concept properly, and then we'll talk about the logic. Now over here, the logic is pretty simple. Understand these n values ka concept. Now the difference here is, in the previous program, I knew that there were going to be 4 variables. So what we did is, there were going to be 4 values. So we started by creating an array of size 4. So this was known to us. Now in this program, what they say is that it is the user who's going to decide the number of values. So अपने को user से पूछना है, how many values? User will say n values. अगर यूजर ने n का वैल्यू 10 दिया तो 10 वैल्यू के लिए प्रोग्राम चलना चाहिए, n का वैल्यू 5 दिया तो 5 वैल्यू के लिए चलना चाहिए, n का वैल्यू 1000 दिया तो 1000 वैल्यूज के लिए प्रोग्राम चलना चाहिए. So precisely what we are going to learn is how to write a program which can work for any number of values or for any number of inputs in C programming. Now observe this. How do I start? Now over here, when I start, I'll first start by creating an array of size n. ठीक है? Now after this, what I'll do is I'll start with the program. I'll first ask the user for the value of n. So suppose n ka value comes as say 4. User wants me to work with 4 values, and then I'm writing a loop which executes say 4 times. This is what I'm doing. Now this loop is exactly the same as the previous program, and this will remain the same throughout because array read karne ka jo loop hai wo same hi rahega. But understand, if I write my code like this, if I think ki I'll create an array of size n over here, then I'll read the value of n, and then I'll execute the loop n times, and this will work fine. No, if you type like this, this program is going to give me an error. This program will generate an error. This program will say undefined n. It will say, I don't know this variable n. आप समझिए, in this program, once my program runs, you will first ask the user for the number of values, then user will give me the value, and that value will then get copied to n. So n ka value comes into existence in this statement, whereas I want to use the value of n in this statement. यानी n का value existence में आने से पहले, before I create the value of n, I'm using the value of n, right? I'm trying to use the value of n without creating that value, and that is why my system will generate an error saying ye n kya hai, I don't know, because the mistake that I'm trying to make over here is I'm reading the value of n बाद में, and उससे पहले I'm trying to use the value of n. Needless to say, कोई भी value आप बनाने से पहले आप use नहीं कर सकते हो. That is why I'm getting all this error. So what I'll do is I'll make one little adjustment to this program. Now, what I do here is I've just declared n over here. Then I'll ask the user enter the number of values. Then what do? We read the value of n. Suppose आपने n का value 3 दिया. So this is the value 3. Now when I go here, n का value is 3. Now by the look of it, it appears to be fine कि हाँ बाबा चलो पहले ना n का value read किया और उसके बाद वो n का value इधर use किया. It might sound proper, right? But no, this program will actually generate 2 errors for me. Now what are the 2 errors? See, first error is it will say that you are not allowed to declare variables over here. In C programming, you have to make the declarations here only at the beginning. See, if this was some other language, Java या .NET होता ना तो ये चल जाता था. But in C language, no, this is not working. You have to declare it above only. Right? आप ऐसा बीच में उसको declare नहीं कर सकते हो. And then it will ask you, the second error that it will give you is that it will say that ये n नहीं चलेगा, you have to give me a constant, ऐसा बोलेगा. Right? Now understand why this error and what is the solution to this error. तो एक बात तो है कि ये लिख के भी कोई problem solve होने वाला नहीं है. मेरे को अगर ये variable declare करना है, ये array बनाना है, तो वो start में ही बनाना पड़ेगा. So honestly, I told you कि इधर declare किया तो error आ रहा है क्योंकि हमने read करने से पहले value use किया. Then I shifted, I'm still getting an error. तो actually ना इस program में और ये program में कोई फर्क ही नहीं पड़ा. Both are incorrect. This is not going to work. Now understand my dilemma. Understand the problem. See, over here, I have to declare this n ऊपर. ये बात तो पक्की है. I'm not able to do this. So what is the possible solution to this problem? Please जरा ध्यान से देखिएगा. If I don't do this, तो इसका अपने को solution क्या मिलने वाला है? Now understand this properly. Look at this statement. I'll just go back to the previous program that we just discussed. See, this was the program that we wrote. Now, in this program, when this program starts, every program always gets executed in 2 steps. The first step is compilation, and the second step is execution. See, when you type your programs, when you get those errors and stuff, that is all compilation. After everything is proper, execution of the program starts. Now remember something. When you allocate memory in your programming, there are 2 ways of allocating memory. बहुत ध्यान से सुनना. When I say allocating memory, मतलब creating variables. I can allocate memory at the time of compilation, which is called as static memory allocation, and I allocate memory at the time of execution, which is called as dynamic memory allocation. So static memory allocation and dynamic memory allocation. Program चलने से पहले कंपाइल टाइम पे जो मेमोरी एलोकेट होती है वो है स्टैटिक मेमोरी एलोकेशन, और प्रोग्राम चलते समय रन टाइम पे जो मेमोरी एलोकेट होती है उसको बोला जाता है डायनामिक मेमोरी एलोकेशन. नाउ of the 3 points that we wrote, or when you talk about arrays, static memory allocation is used for creating an array. यानी एक array बनाने, एक array के लिए memory program चलने से पहले allocate होता है. So now, see, if you talk of this program, इसमें यहाँ पर I have created the variable I and array A4. Now forget that variable I, A4 में एक array बना रहा हूं. ये array कब बनता है? ये array के लिए memory program चलने से पहले allocate होगी. But because 4 is a constant, I don't have an issue. Program चलने से पहले system क्या करेगा? ये एक array बना देगा, which is of size 4, done. Right? Now, whatever be the program, memory allocation तो program चलने से पहले ही होगा. I hope this is understood. Now I'll come back to the program that we have been talking about. Now, let's talk about this program, n values wala. Now understand, over here, I want to allocate memory for this array before the program starts executing. Now suppose my program executes, my program starts executing, सब बराबर से हो गया, execute हो गया, तो पहले screen पे लिख के आएगा enter number of values, फिर आप n का value दोगे, which is say suppose 3. See, understand, the value of this variable will come into existence only in the second step of execution. Execution के time पे ही अपने को n का value मिलेगा, whereas this statement has to be executed, या value of n has to be used before my program executes. I need to execute this at compile time. तो प्रॉब्लम ये है कि n का वैल्यू आने तक मैं रुक नहीं सकता हूं, एंड द मेमोरी हैज टू बी एलोकेटेड बिफोर आई रन द प्रोग्राम और बिफोर द वैल्यू ऑफ n कम्स इनटू पिक्चर. अब सवाल ये है, अगर ये n का वैल्यू प्रोग्राम चलने से पहले आ ही नहीं सकता है, तो मैं मेमोरी एलोकेशन के लिए उसको कैसे यूज कर सकता हूं? For that matter, whenever you are creating an array, never ever write a variable over here. Reason is, the value of the variable will not come into existence before the program runs, and I will be required to use it before the program runs. इसलिए कभी भी array बनाते समय variable नहीं लिखा जा सकता है. That is why I said, when you write this, ये program आपको error देगा, वो बोलेगा इधर बोलेगा अपने को constant is needed. तो कभी भी याद रखिए, एरे बनाते समय हम ये वैल्यू n का लिख नहीं सकते. अब सवाल ये है कि ये ब्रैकेट्स के अंदर आई वांटेड टू यूज n व्हाइल एलोकेटिंग मेमोरी. अब n का वैल्यू n तो मैं लिख नहीं सकता हूं, मैं वेरिएबल तो लिख नहीं सकता हूं, बिकॉज द वेरिएबल्स वोंट एग्जिस्ट ओनली बिफोर माय प्रोग्राम रन्स. तो मैं लिखूं क्या? सी, ओवर हियर आई डोंट हैव एन ऑप्शन बट टू वर्क विद एन अप्रोक्सीमेट वैल्यू. मैं एक अंदाजे पर काम करने वाला हूं. I don't have a choice with that. Also, please understand this. This C programming that you're learning is a pretty old language. It's a approximately 40-year-old language. It has certain limitations which you can do nothing about, right? तो इधर मैं variable तो लिख ही नहीं सकता हूँ. तो ऐसे टाइम पे हम अंदाजे पर काम करेंगे. Over here, I'll just think कि हाँ बाबा, ये प्रोग्राम में कितना मेमोरी लग सकता है. Suppose I've gone with an assumption that user will give me maximum 100 values. So what I'll do is, instead of writing n, I'll write this value 100. So what this will do is, this will create a memory, this will create an array which is capable of storing 100 values like this. वो ऐसा बना लेगा. हाँ, अब अगर आप मेरे को बोलते हो कि प्रोग्राम चलते समय अरे मैं तो 3 ही वैल्यू देने वाला हूं, सपोज ऐसा, बाकी 97 मेमोरी लोकेशंस का क्या? यस, बाकी 97 मेमोरी लोकेशन वेस्ट हो जाएगी. आई कैन डू नथिंग अबाउट इट. या मे बी मैंने 100 साइज का एरे बना दिया, आप मेरे को बोलो कि नहीं आई हैव मोर देन 100 वैल्यूज, तो क्या? यस, माय प्रोग्राम विल नॉट वर्क. तो यहां पर यस, इस प्रोग्राम में मेमोरी बच जाने का भी डर है और मेमोरी कम पड़ने का भी डर है, बट आई कैन डू नथिंग अबाउट इट. This is the limitation that we have in C programming language, and this is precisely the reason why all modern day languages, they don't use an array in its pure form like this. ये problem है. तो अब एक बात आप अच्छे से समझ लीजिए, whether it is C or C++, whenever you are creating an array, you will have to give a constant over here while creating that array. अब वो 100 लिखते हो आप, क्या 10 लिखते हो, या 25 लिखते हो, या 45 लिखते हो, I don't care what the value is. Maybe when you're studying, maybe if you've seen some books or if you've studied in college, they might have used some constant, 10, 20, 45, 60, 80. What constant you are writing, I don't have any arguments on that, but it has to be a constant for sure. One last time, yes, अगर मैं 100 में से 4 ही memory location use कर रहा हूँ, बाकी memory waste हो रही है, I can do nothing about it. If you're planning to give me more than 100 values, my program is not working and I still can't do anything about it. So this is how we are going to work with n values. Now throughout the syllabus, I am going to write a of 100, but I repeat, ऐसा कुछ जरूरी नहीं है. You can write whatever the constant that you want, just that it has to be a constant. Is this clear? So this is how we are going to handle, say, n values. Okay, now I'll run this program. ये program में हमको दो चीजें करना है. First, I need to read n values and then I need to find the sum of n values. Now just observe how this program works. तो मैंने यहाँ पर एक array बना दिया of size 100, which you can see I've drawn it here on screen. I've declared a variable sum initialized to 0. This is going to store the sum of the values. अब मैंने आपसे पूछा printf statement, enter number of values. आपने suppose n का value दिया 3. So you want this program to work for 3 values. Now observe how this loop will work. I'll read 3 values from you. पहले 3 value read करूंगा और बाद में उसका sum निकालूंगा. तो first for loop is going to read 3 values from me. कैसे? I0. 0 less than 3 is true. Come down. Read the first value at A0. A0 is this memory location. इधर गया value. फिर यहां से I'll go back. I plus 0 से 1 हो गया. This is 1. 1 less than 3 is true. Come down. Read the next value at A1. A1 में ये value आ गया. Suppose 9. Go back. I plus is 2. 2 less than 3 is true. Come down. This is A2. A2 में suppose next value आ गया. Go back. I plus is 3. आप इधर आइए. I is 3. 3 less than 3 is false. This condition fails. My loop terminates. I've read 3 values. Yes, 100 में से मैंने खाली 3 मेमोरी लोकेशन यूज किया है और बाकी वेस्ट हो रहा है. I can do nothing. Also never forget that the remaining memory locations are never empty. They'll all have garbage values. हाँ, वो कभी empty नहीं होते. They have garbage values. So first for loop is going to read 3 values from me. Now I'm required to add these values. तो मैं क्या करूंगा? अभी ना I'm going to create. I've created this variable sum which I've initialized to 0. पहले I'll go to index 0. उसके ऊपर जो वैल्यू है वो लाके ऐड करूंगा. बाद में I'll go to index 1. उसके ऊपर जो वैल्यू है वो लाके ऐड करूंगा. बाद में I'll go to index 2. उसके ऊपर जो वैल्यू है वो लाके ऐड करूंगा. And once I've done all this, whatever is the sum, that is going to be my answer. Now observe ये कैसे होगा. I'm now going to write a loop which will repeat n times, which will fetch n values and calculate the sum for me. कैसे? ये देखिए. For I is equal to 0, n का वैल्यू कितना है? 3 है. 0 less than 3 is true. The new value of sum is the existing value of sum जो अपन ने 0 रखा हुआ है plus A0. A0 में क्या वैल्यू है? A0 में वैल्यू था 8. Then I'll go back. I plus is 1. इधर आइए. 1 less than 3 is true. Sum is equal to sum plus A1. A1 में क्या वैल्यू है? 9. ये इधर गया. Go back. I plus is 2. यहाँ ये 2 less than 3 is true. The new value of sum is the existing value of sum plus A2. A2 में क्या value है? Which is 5. Go back. I plus is 3. I is now 3. 3 less than 3 is false. Condition fails. This loop terminates. Then I'll come out and I'll display the value of sum using this printf statement, and then my program terminates over here. So this is how I'm going to write my program. The first for loop is reading n values and my second for loop is calculating the sum. See, because I'm working with multiple values, I am required to write loops so that I can fetch multiple values. But more than that, the point that I wanted to discuss here was, or something that was more important was that why have we written 100 when the program says n? I have this limitation with the memory and I can do nothing, absolutely nothing about this in C language. Now till the end of this syllabus, you'll see me writing n only, right? Now you'll quickly write down this program and then we'll go to the next concept. Okay, so in the first program, we saw how to create an array, how to read into an array, and how to display from an array. Now in the second program, we just saw how to tackle n number of values, right? So we've just seen that we cannot use a variable, we have to use constants at all time, and we are going to use this constant 100. So after this, there should be no doubt whatsoever कि ये हमेशा array बनाते time 100 क्यों use करता है. I've made this very clear. You can use any constant that you like, right? Just that you cannot use a variable there, right? Now we'll go to the third program, the third important concept. I'm trying to merge the concept of array and functions now. 10 seconds, please take down the question. Write a program to count the number of even and odd numbers in a given list of n numbers. Use function implementation. So we are going to write an array ka program using function. Okay, let's start here. Now observe what exactly is going to be my strategy. See, when we spoke about functions earlier, so in our programs, we used to have a main function, and then we used to have a function, say sum, right? Then in main, we were reading some values a and b. Then what we were doing is we were passing these values a and b to this function. This function would accept these values, say as x and y, and then do whatever. This is what we have been doing. We have been passing the data from one function to another. Now in this program, what I plan to do is I'm going to write two functions. One is main and the other is compute. I'm required to calculate the number of even and odd numbers. That is okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this array in main function and pass this array to this function called compute. So what you need to keep an eye on in this program is कि कैसे एक function में से दूसरे function को array pass करते हैं. See, earlier when we were passing the values ना, हम लोग एक या दो या चार values pass करते थे. But over here I have to pass an entire array which can have n number of values. So that is what I'm required to pass. So we need to understand carefully how to pass multiple values which are in the form of an array. How to pass those values to a function. So just observe this carefully. Observe this very carefully. Now, I've started by creating an array of size 100. I hope now this is clear why we've been using 100, right? Now, suppose I've asked you for the number of values. How many values do you want? Suppose आपने n का value मेरे को 3 दिया. Then I've written a for loop which will read 3 values into an array. Suppose these are the values that you have given me, which I've read. Now we've already executed this loop couple of times. I'm not doing it anymore. Now, not to forget, बाकी जो memory locations है 3 से लेके 99 तक, they have some garbage value. So I have read these values. अब मैं क्या करने वाला हूँ? ये जो array है A, ये पूरा का पूरा array A उठा के मेरे को एक दूसरे function को pass करने का है. So the way we were passing ordinary variables, now I'm planning to pass a complete array to it. Now just observe this. How do we go about doing something like this? Observe this. Over here, I'm calling this function compute and I'm writing A. That's it. See, it's very simple to pass an array. We might think, अरे ये array में इतनी सारी values है, कैसे array pass करेंगे? All you have to do is you have to write the name of the array. Because please understand, the name of the array refers to all these memory locations ना. It refers to everything. तो खाली array का नाम लिखा तो you will be able to pass that array. Now यहाँ पर we are talking of an ordinary array, whether it's an ordinary array or whether it's a 2D array or whether it is it's a 2D array or it is a string or an array of structures, array of pointers. I don't care what the array is. अगर array pass करने का है तो all you have to do is write the name of the array. That's it. हमने वो चीज यहां पर लिख दी है. Is this understood? This is how we are going to pass an array for you. ठीक है? But now understand, I'm going to call this compute function. Basically क्या होने वाला है? ये मैं main function में हूं. एक दूसरा function अभी मैं लिखने वाला हूं compute. I've created this array. I've passed this array to this compute function. This compute function is now required to process. जैसे अपने example में पूछा है, count the number of even and odd numbers. Now that is what this compute function is required to do. But understand what is the problem that I'll face in this communication abhi, and then what is the possible solution for that. Observe this. Look at this. Now just observe this. What have I done over here? Now this is main. This is my main function. This is my compute function. मैंने दोनों function यहाँ लिखे हुए. I have asked the user for the value of n. Suppose n का value user ने अपने को दिया है 4. So what I did is I have read 4 values from the user. अब जब मैं लिखता हूं compute a, ये जो array a आपने बनाया, ये पूरा का पूरा array a इधर पास हो जाएगा. Now understand why have we put these brackets? Suppose अगर मैं ये brackets नहीं डालता, square brackets नहीं डालता, तो the system would have thought that I'm passing an integer value, सादा a. मेरे को system को बोलना है that no, I'm not passing an integer value. This data that I have passed over here is an array. See अपन ने क्या बोला? See again. This is the array A. I've passed this value here, this array over here. यहाँ पर मेरे को सिस्टम को बोलना है that this A that we are passing is not an ordinary integer, it's an array. इसलिए वो square bracket सामने रखे गए हैं. I hope it is now clear why have we put these empty square brackets. Those empty square brackets are just telling the compiler that the data that is being passed to you is an array. Now understand, ये जो आपका array था, which you can see on the left hand side of your screen, वो पूरा का पूरा array अभी इसके पास आ गया, ये compute function के पास आ गया, something like this. But understand this please, ये जो variable n है, observe, this is the number of values जो अपने काम के है. See ये 4 वैल्यू के आगे जो भी garbage values है till this index 99, ये values अपने कुछ काम के नहीं है. Now main function को क्या होता है? Main function knows कि बाबा अपने पास 100 values का array है, लेकिन इसमें से खाली 4 values काम की है, right? बाकी सब अपना garbage values है. But understand this variable n. Look where have I declared this variable n. This variable n has been declared inside main. And what do we know? All the variables which are declared inside a function are local only to that function. मतलब किसी भी वेरिएबल को आप जिस फंक्शन के अंदर डिक्लेयर करोगे उसको सिर्फ उसी फंक्शन के अंदर एक्सेस किया जा सकता है. मतलब ये कि यहां पर व्हेन आई क्रिएट दिस वेरिएबल n, ये वेरिएबल n जो है आपके कंप्यूट फंक्शन को दिखता ही नहीं है ना, बिकॉज मेन में डिक्लेयर है वो वेरिएबल. अब आप सोचिए मैं कंप्यूट फंक्शन हूं, आई हैव गॉट दिस एंटायर एरे which has 100 values. उसमें ये फर्स्ट 4 वैल्यूज है और बाकी मेमोरी लोकेशंस में भी कुछ ना कुछ वैल्यूज है which are garbage values. अब अगर मैं कंप्यूट फंक्शन हूं, मेरे को तो n दिखता नहीं है, तो मेरे को कैसे पता चलेगा कि ये एरे में से कितनी वैल्यूज मेरे काम की है? Are you getting it? See, understand, I have this array of size 100, but मैंने मेन में यूजर से पूछा how many values, तो यूजर ने मेन में मेरे को बोला कि there are 4 values. तो मेरे को मालूम है कि ये 100 values में से खाली 4 values काम का है. But the point is, ये compute function cannot see this value n. The reason is n is declared inside another function और एक function दूसरे function का value नहीं देख सकता है. Now that compute cannot see n, compute now has an array with 100 values. उसको पता ही नहीं है कि इसमें से कितने values काम का है. That is why this function will not work like this. So what I need to do is, from main, when I'm calling a function, I am required to tell that function that you take this array और उसमें से इतना values काम का है. That is why when I'm calling a function, I will not only pass an array like this, I will also pass the number of values over here. अब आप इसको वापस से देखिए. See, over here, I've started this main function. I've asked the user for the value of n, say 4. Suppose whatever other 4 values that you've read from the user. Now what I'm doing is I'm passing 2 things to this compute function. This a is an array and this n is the number of values. This first a is an array and n is the sada integer. That is why if you see, when I'm accepting, the first argument is an array and dusra argument is the sada integer is what I'm reading over here. Is this understood? Right? So whenever, always remember, whenever you pass an array in C language, you will always be required to pass the number of values as well to the function. नहीं तो function को समझेगा ही नहीं कि कितना values काम का है. So what happens over here is, please observe this. Now when I pass this, ये पूरा का पूरा array भी इधर pass हो गया जो ये array है, system has got this entire array, plus if n का value was 4, this value 4 has also been passed over here. तो अब अगर मैं compute function हूं, so I not only have the array and now I also know कि बाबा इसमें से खाली 4 values काम का है और बाकी जो है वो garbage values है. So I need not consider them in my processing. That is why while working with an array or while passing an array to a function, you will just pass the array and you'll also pass the number of values that I'm required to process. Is this understood? Also, are these arguments understood? यहाँ पर ये bracket इसलिए empty है, ये brackets इसलिए empty है because I'm just using it to tell the function that the data that is passed to you is an array. अगर square bracket नहीं डालूंगा तो it becomes similar to this, right? Over here, the second n that I'm passing is a सादा integer. If I don't put those square brackets, system को लगेगा वो भी एक सादा integer था, इसलिए वो square brackets डाला गया. So this is how you're going to pass an array to a function. Now I'll go to the complete program. Observe this. बहुत ध्यान से देखेंगे. I've started by creating an array over here, main में. Now I've declared this function void. This function is not going to return any value, hence it has been initialized as or declared as void. Compute. This function is going to accept an array and a sada integer. That is what I'm telling by writing like this. Then I've asked the user for the value of n. Suppose user ने अपने को n का value दिया 4. ये for loop लिख के हमने array read कर लिया. यहाँ तक तो सेम ही है. Now I've passed the array and the value of n. n का value कितना है 4 और array तो जो पूरा array है अपना 100 size का वो array हम function को pass कर देंगे. Now this is my complete program. Now this is where you've passed this array to a function and this function is now going to implement the logic for counting the number of even and odd numbers. Now what I've done over here is, if you see to the left of your screen, the main function that I've written, उसमें मैंने क्या किया, सिर्फ एक array बनाया, array read किया और function को pass कर दिया. कोई processing की ही नहीं. Now whatever I'm required to calculate to count the number of even and odd numbers, now that is what I'm going to do in this function. So what you need to understand is that the main function that I've written remains exactly the same in all the programs. देखो कुछ भी program होगा उसमें array read तो करना पड़ेगा ना, तो array read करके function को pass कर देने का. My main function remains exactly the same throughout the chapter now. Only thing that I'll keep changing is the function. पूरा processing function में ही रखा गया है. Now I'll just show you how exactly is this function working. I didn't have space on this particular slide, so I've just taken the function and I've come to the next slide. Suppose the values that you've read, n is 4. Say if you've read the values 5, 8, 7 and 9. Suppose this is the array. Now observe how am I going to check whether this is even or odd. मैंने ना दो वेरिएबल बनाए हुए हैं, एक का नाम है even, एक का नाम है odd. From this array, I'll take one value at a time. I'll divide it by 2. If it is even, I'll increment the value of even variable. If it is odd, I'll increment the value of this odd variable. तो सब होने के बाद whatever is the value of this variable even and this variable odd, that will be the number of even and odd numbers in that array. Now observe this. ये loop कैसे चलता है? So I've initialized even to 0, odd to 0. For I is equal to 0, suppose n is 4. I is 0. 0 less than 4 is true. Come down. A0. A0 में क्या वैल्यू है? 5. 5 mod 2. 2 से डिवाइड करके देखने का. 5 mod 2 is 1. रिमाइंडर अगर 0 आ गया मतलब 2 से डिवाइड हो गया मतलब नंबर इवन है, नहीं तो ऑड है. 1 is equal to 0 is false. So I go to the else part. Odd plus plus. Odd 0 से कितना हो गया? 1 हो गया. Then यहाँ से लूप खत्म हुआ. I go back. I plus plus is now 1. I कितना हो गया? 1. 1 less than 4 is true. Come down. A1. A1 में क्या वैल्यू है? 8. 8 mod 2 remainder is 0. 0 is equal to 0 is true. मतलब ये even number था तो even plus plus even 0 से 1 हो गया. Then I go back. I plus plus now becomes 2. Now observe this. I'll just make some space here. The loop will continue like this. So this is 2. I'll come here. 2 less than 4 is true. A2. A2 में क्या value है? 7. 7 mod 2 remainder is 1. 1 is equal to 0 is false. So I've got another odd number. So उसको odd plus plus, I'll increment it. I'll go back. I plus plus is now 3. यहाँ ये 3 less than 4 is true. Come down. A3 में क्या value है? 9. 9 mod 2 is 1. 1 is equal to 0 is false. If this is false, I'll come over here. This becomes 3. Go back. I plus plus is now 4. I'll go over here. 4 less than 4 is false. This condition fails. My loop terminates. This loop terminates. I'll display the value of even, which is 1. I'll display the value of odd, which is 3. So my solution has 1 even numbers and 3 odd numbers. So this is how it is going to work. But more than even and odd, what is important is that you understand how exactly do we pass an array to a function. So this now completes the first 3 programs. First program ने हमको बताया how to create a basic array, how to read the data, how to display the data. Second program ने हमको बताया how to work with n values using an array. और ये third program ने हमको ये सिखाया कि how to pass an array to a function. This completes the very basics of functions. अब इसके बाद these basics will remain the same. I'll have to just keep applying the logics. Also, going further, my main function is going to remain the same throughout this chapter because main में हमने कोई processing रखी ही नहीं है. All you have to do is you have to keep changing the function, right? That's it. You can just complete this program. You can write down this program, and this will mark the end of the basics of arrays. Then we'll go to the logics, the complex logics that we have to implement using an array.